Greetings. It's my privilege to introduce the speaker for September 22nd, 2025 for the Clay County Historic Society, Jim Corbin. Jim is going to be talking about his life growing up in the Clay County Jail in Green Cove Springs, Florida. I hope you guys enjoy it, and I'm going to cut to our video.
Jennings Marie was elected sheriff in 1964, and he took office in 1965. The other big event in 1964 was Hurricane Dora that come through and blew the roof off our house. So Dad rented us a house because he said, I think I'm going to work for the sheriff. That's all he told us. We didn't know what he was doing. So we said, okay, cool. So come to find out, he wasn't going to buy any more property because he knew we were going to move into the jail. And when he broke that to the family, that was quite interesting. But he came in and said, we're moving to the jail. And we moved to the jail, I believe, in January of 65. He was elected in 64. In November, he couldn't take office to January in 65. And Dad come to work for him there at the jail, and we moved in. My sister lived with us then, before she was married, and I was on this side in the jail. My bedroom was on this side of the jail, in the very back, the wall between my bedroom and the cell block. And upstairs, yeah, upstairs. And they had the radio box. Now it was also probably almost as tall as that door right there, was in the bedroom with me. And every time they mashed the button for the radio, the red light would come on. So I got used to that after about a year. That was our communications. They had one tower here that was like 360 feet high. And it was provided communications for the whole county, all 8 or 10 deputies that they had then. It was quite challenging. Let me see, keep my notes here. Let's see, I was 14 when we took over the jail. Can you flip a light on? I'm having a hard time seeing this. All right. Oh, perfect. Okay, so yeah, I was 14 years old when we moved into the jail that year, and that was quite an impressionable age. We lived there. It was quite exciting. Dad worked 12-hour shifts. He worked from 6 o'clock in the morning to 6 in the afternoon, 6 days a week. He wouldn't work on Sunday. Out of question.
12 hours a day.
12 hours a day. The other guy come in and worked 6 o'clock at night to 6 o'clock in the morning. The Dad relieved him. And and then shortly after that, Mom started working in communications, just doing the radio dispatch. And she was writing bonds, and she was doing all the paperwork involved in the jail itself, ordering stuff, supplies. You saw on the flyer, it's a Ruth Corbin. She was buying eggs for 3 dozen for 65 cents or something like that. And she's still living. She's 95 years old. What a blessing. And she was, I told her I was coming here to do this. She like to drive me crazy. She kept, tell them about this, tell them about that, tell them. I mean, she hammered so much stuff. It was just hard for me. I said, Mom, I gotta write this down. I couldn't remember it all. But she's still living, and she's doing very fine. She's very healthy. Her mind goes from time to time, but hell, so does mine. All right, so I lived across the street over here was my junior high school. I was in junior high school over me and Steve. And John's brother Don was a year or so ahead. We'd all meet over here on the field and play football and baseball and basketball and all kind of stuff. We had our own little playground right in our backyard. And I remember distinctly one time I had hit a baseball through the window over here at the school one weekend, And so next Monday, I get up and get ready to go across the street to the school, and I walk out and look over at that window. Well, the principal happened to be standing outside watching me come out, and he looked over at that window, and he said, "Come here." So I went over there. It was Joe Elliott. Joe said, "You know anything about that window?" I said, "Yeah, I do." He said, "What happened to it?" I said, "I hit a baseball through it." He says, "Okay." I said, "Any chance I can get my baseball back?" He said, "Yeah, but you need to go tell your dad you're going to have to buy a window." I said, "You can keep the baseball, that ain't that important." So, yeah, I got my baseball back, and Dad replaced the window. But it was quite an exciting time. We had, weekends here was unbelievable. 14, 15 years old, I would be, Friday nights, Dad let me stay up late, 1 o'clock, so I could watch the entertainment. There'd be folks coming in drunk as Cooter Brown. I've seen a guy shot with birdshot. I've seen a guy stabbed. It was a little weird, but it was just something that you just part of it. You know, we had we had one guy, we had our Sunday, we were having dinner, and we're sitting over around the table, the family. Bang! The shot goes off. It scares Daddy, all of us. So we jump up, run out the door, just had to walk across the hall, run across the hall, and Daddy jerked the door open, the guy standing there, he had dropped his gun on the counter and it went off. Oh. And when he blew the window out of the way. So Dad looks at him and says, "Jim's will be here in the morning. You can tell him what happened at his window." So, and he actually shot a hole through it. But thank God, I mean, he didn't shoot one of us. But yeah, that was kind of an earth-shattering moment. We had an uprising one time in the jail. We had these guys had come in. They'd arrested this. They called them gangs, but nothing like what you see today. This was just a bunch, 4 or 5 guys who would break in pharmacies and steal stuff, go through the roof, get through the wall, dig holes in the wall. And they caught them. And they had them all, 6 of them in our jail, because they caught them in Middleburg. And they were going to have an uprising in the jail. Well, about 2 o'clock one morning, the uprising began. And they were all getting out of their cells and just beating and framming and carrying on. So Dad gets up and goes downstairs, comes back, gets his clothes on. So what's up? He said, "Well, we have got a little problem in the jail. These guys are having a little uprising." He said, "I got to call the sheriff." I said, "Okay." Well, the sheriff lived in Keystone. It's going to take him 30 minutes to get here. Yeah. He says, "We got to go inside the jail." I said, "What do you mean we?"
You were 15.
Yeah, I was 15 years old. And so we go, we finally get, the city of Green Cove had 1 police officer on. And the county had assigned 1 county deputy to Green Cove Springs. So there was my dad and those 2 guys going to spoil the uprising. Well, they come into the door, and all the commotion that's going on, the guys are really beating the toilets, tearing up everything. It's just awful. And Jenny Marie finally shows up. He shows up. He says, "What's going on?" And I'm outside the jail. I said, "They're fighting in there or something." He says, "Okay, lock me in there." I said, "Okay." He said, "Don't let anybody out this door if it ain't me and your daddy. Don't let them out." I said, "Okay." So he walks in, and the kitchen part was up to the jail where they fed the trustees and inmates, was right there off the jail. And he would, they were all in there. And I could see through the bars, and I could hear it. But I had the door locked. I had locked him in there. And he says, "Who's running this show here?" And this old guy gets up and says, "We're protesting," and that's all he got to say. Jennings knocked him out cold as a cucumber. I mean, he hit him, he just fell out. He said, "All right, here's what's going to happen next. You guys are going to go eat in your cells, or I'm going to do that to every one of you in here." They all just got in a line. Everybody went back to their jail cell, and we locked them down. But they was just tearing up everything. Another incident we had this kid who was a juvenile, And his parents adopted him late in life. They were in their 50s or 60s, and by the time he got to be a teenager, he was out of control. And can I get that water out there, John? Sure. He was out of control. So he was, about every other weekend, he wound up here. She couldn't handle him. The parents couldn't handle him. They called the deputies or the sheriff's office, and we have to come, or the sheriff's office would have to go get him. Bring him in down here and leave him over the night and send him back home the next day. Well, they brought him in one weekend, and he was off the chain, and he was taken. If you've been over to the jail, the bunks have chains on them, right, that hold it on the corners. He was picking it up and dropping it, picking it up, dropping it, you know. So this is about midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning. Dad gets up, he says, "Come here." He says, "We're gonna go down there and stop that banging." I said, "Okay." So we go in there, and he goes, the guys we didn't have the juvenile facility there. We only had them separated by the cells in the jailhouse. And he goes into jail, and he says, "I'm gonna open the door, I'm gonna go in, you lock the door." I said, "Okay." And he had his belt in his hand. I'd never seen Daddy whip anybody but me, so that was quite entertaining. But he did. He took his belt off, and he wore that young man's butt out. He didn't beat him. He gave him a good thrashing. I mean, a damn good one. He never came back. He never come back to that jail another weekend. We never had to go back up there to deal with the sheriff's office. Didn't have to go up there and deal with his parents. Had no more problems with him. So Dad was right. He just needed his butt whipped, and that's what he got. On the radio communications, this goes back to, I became public safety director here in 1980. And I was in charge of the fire and rescue and emergency management and communications. I started the 911 system in 1987 here. We didn't even have a 911 system. It was all 7-digit numbers. So, but when I came in here, we still had that one tower for the radio communications. And I said, we have got to do something. We've got to change this. So I went to that time, Scott was the sheriff. I said, "Scott, we've got to have some community, because you could get in Keystone and in Orange Park areas, and you would have no contact with anybody. If anything happened to a deputy, back then they had to check in every so often, like every 45 minutes or an hour. They had to come up on the radio and just say, 'I'm here.' But if they didn't do that, you sent somebody out there to them, because you had no communications. You know, because if they hit the key to their mic, it wouldn't come in here to the dispatch center. So anyway, we went to the 800 megahertz system, which is what they have today. We have 9 towers up now doing the same thing that one little tower did, or tried to do by itself at 360 feet. And that was quite an undertaking for the communications and for the citizens of Clay County. I mean, it's just been a blessing. It really was. But on the weekends, when I was here, on the weekends, it was quite entertaining. You would see people come in here that a lot of them was disorderly. They'd have a little too much to drink, and they'd get a little wild, and or they'd be driving, DUI. That was a big deal. And some of them would be regulars. It was just like Mayberry. The guy, "What are you doing in here?" "Well, they caught me drinking again." And so Daddy'd get up on Monday morning and send them on their way back home, or they'd bond out, or we'd see them in church on Sunday. So it was quite interesting. You had to kind of go along with that kind of thing. You look back at it and you think, well, golly, how did they get away with all that stuff? But that was the way of life, man. I mean, everybody took care of everybody, and if they knew you were, like to have a little alcohol and you got out of hand, they'd take you home. They wouldn't take you to jail. They'd take you home, and you'd sleep it off or whatever it is you had to do. But they didn't put up any violence. I mean, you wouldn't get violent. That wasn't a smart thing to do, because they had very short fuses back then too. But when I was, one of the biggest things I remember about the jail is the food. I could eat all the time. They had a cook who actually lived at the jail. And that cook I could come in and say, hey, what you got for dinner? Well, they always had fried chicken on Sunday. That was a given. Always fried chicken. So I'd eat fried chicken with them at about 4 o'clock Sunday. Then I'd eat dinner at my house with Mom about 7 o'clock at night. So eating wasn't a problem. I go in and I play football. And back then we had practice at 6 o'clock in the morning. And I'd go in, do a football practice, get back home about 7:30, 8 o'clock, go into the kitchen, and say, Mac, I'm starving. What do you want? I said, how about some eggs? Grits. I ain't doing grits, I ain't got time for that, but I'll cook you an egg. So he cooked me up an egg or any kind. Breakfast was always available. You could, if you didn't want
Is
grits.
that all in the galley, that little?
Yeah, all in that little
It's all gone.
section, yeah.
The kitchen.
Yeah, the kitchen, he had the kitchen part, and it had a little live-in section where the cook stayed. I didn't understand all that myself, but
What was it, fried eggs, fried bologna, eggs and gravy?
you could have anything you want. I mean, he was good. He was Mac McDoffus, as I recall. He was a very good guy. Yeah, McDaniels, yeah, that's who it was. But after we did that for a while, I just had to quit doing that because I was gaining so much weight. And it was. But the other part about living over there that was I always thought was very interesting is we had the supervisor of elections office over here, and that's when they put the returns on a board, chalkboard, outside of the supervisor of elections, and you go over there and stand around and see people you hadn't seen from all over the county for 3 or 4 hours. They'd all stand, watch the returns come in, and it was quite the
Social event of the
Yeah.
season.
yeah, well, it was an event. I mean, what you gonna do tonight? Well, I'm gonna go watch the returns come in, man. We're gonna see what, you didn't have a whole lot to do with who got elected. We didn't care. We're just gonna get to see everybody. Yeah, we had, and they had a little thing where they would bury people that didn't win. I don't know if you ever,
During Marline, they
Heard.
reach out of the back of a truck, little spotlight, and they take commode lids and put your picture in it, you gone.
yeah, they had them on Highway 17.
Right here.
Yeah, and
Pizza King.
yeah, with Pizza Kid, had a few of them there, some of them over here on the other side of town, but that was a big deal. The elections were fun. It was fun. It wasn't bitter like things are now. It was just fun. And, you get caught up in some of that. It was, I guess if you was on the wrong side of it, it wasn't too much fun, but it was, and y'all got any questions about anything? I've kind of blunt through this real quick. I didn't know how long I'd have, and I'm just trying to think of things that were
How
important.
hot was it, that jail didn't have air conditioning?
No, we had window fans.
Yeah.
It didn't, we had just a window fan, and we'd hang a fan in the bedrooms. At night, the only time you had a fan. 'Cause you
But
was,
that was on your side.
yeah, you would stick a fan in the window and you didn't pay any mind to it.
Was there really a sweat box?
They had a boiler room down in the bottom, had steam heat, had a boiler room down here on the bottom of the jail, and they used that from time to time for people that were
Attitude adjustments.
attitude, yeah, good point, yeah, attitude, yeah. If they get out of hand and they go in the boiler room and all their stuff, they show up and all their stuff will be in the boiler room, they knew it wasn't a good thing. Yes, ma'am.
So I'm trying to picture this, when you walk into the jail now, and you walk into the office where Bishop is, and to the, before you get to her office on the left-hand side, there's like a space there. What was that used for? I heard you say something about upstairs with the bedrooms?
Yeah, the living quarters.
Downstairs.
Yeah, when you come through the jail, on the left-hand side, you went into the living quarters, our living room and kitchen, and we had 3 or 4 bedrooms upstairs. But you had to come out, and the other side of the hall was the jail, communications, and everything going into the right-hand side. Yeah, that was, so I mean, for me, at 15, 16 years old, I mean, I was just, I could just hang around down there and have fun. It was fun to watch sometimes. So, yeah, it was. It was scary sometimes too. It'd get a little hairy every now and then. But other than that, it was interesting. I wouldn't change it really.
So what was your father's title?
He was the jailer, and he actually ran the jail. And mom didn't cook. A lot of people think, well, your mom cooked for everybody. No, she didn't do that. She just did all the paperwork that involved ordering stuff for the jail. And she come over here and worked with Jennings, and when his guy would be off for the weekend or be off from vacation, she'd come over here and fill in and be his secretary or whatever for whatever time that took. And but she did communications is all she did. If you would talk on the radio, and of course we all did. If you were by, after I've been there for a while, if I was coming by, I'd say, Dad, 485's calling you. He'd say, answer him. Okay, go ahead. And he talked. We'd all just kind of do that kind of thing. It was. This is a funny story, kind of a little sad, but we had this guy that worked for us, and his name was Dewey, and this is awful. He was kind of hair-lipped, and he got on the radio and called him Palatka one night, and I'm standing there, and he says, Clay S.O. to Putnam, and that guy on Putnam said, go ahead, Dewey. He said, how do you know that me? he said, how do you know that was me? Yeah, I said, Dewey. And not everybody talks like that. So, yeah, it was quite yeah. But we did a lot of stuff for the highway patrol. We had all the state guys would come in and check in here with us, with the sheriff's office here, and then they'd be dispatched out of here sometimes. But most of their dispatch was done out of Palatka. But they had guys assigned to certain areas, Blanding Boulevard, Highway 17, like that. And they were a big part of our law enforcement operations back then because they were handy. And they didn't have many. If something happened to a deputy, or you didn't get a deputy on the phone or on the radio, and you started rolling somebody towards him, 9% of the time, this highway patrol would beat you there. They would get there. Yes, sir. I lived there 4 years. Lived over there 4 years. Yeah. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
How was it for your sister who's in dating age? How did it go?
Well, she got married not too long after we moved in there. I don't know if she was getting out or what to do. No, it was interesting for her too. Yeah, but she wasn't. I think she lived there about 2 years, and then she got married, or a year and a half, and moved out. She was out of high school, and then back then that was, when you got out of high school, you was a girl, you got married. It's kind of what happened. Yes, ma'am.
I'm wondering about female convicts. Do you have any women in there? Or do they have the same?
No.
No women?
Well, not that I can remember. If we did, we didn't have a separate facility for them.
That's what I was wondering. Yeah.
No, there was no separate facility for them. I don't ever remember having any ladies or women over there doing time. I mean, serving time. I never.
They put Frankie and them in the yard.
Yeah, they didn't.
On Sunday morning.
Yeah, they didn't. They kind of a work release program. When the women would come over there, they kind of put them on put them out. Yes, sir.
How are your friends? Were they jealous? Did they want to come over and take a tour and see what was happening?
No, a lot of them. We'd go out with my buddies and tell some stories about what's going on over there, and some of them would come and hang around, but they couldn't do that. I want to know if my buddies would want to come over and hang around at the jail. No, I didn't. Dad wouldn't let that happen. I had a friend over, and he had a time he had to leave. He had to leave. I mean, that's the way it was. Yeah.
Concerning that gang uprising, it sounds like they weren't locked in to begin with.
No, they were in the bullpen, what they called the bullpen. They would open, the cells were open, and they could go in and out all around in the area. They were not individually locked. At night, at 9 o'clock at night, that's when they'd have lockdown. So at 9 o'clock at night, the guy'd go in and say, okay, guys, everybody go to their cell, and they'd all go to the cell, and they'd lock them in the cell. But up until in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning, or 5:30, whatever time it was, they put the road gang out. That's when they bring up here a school bus, and the guy'd be standing out there waiting for them to get on the school bus, and they go on the road and work.
Well, that was good.
One of the impressions I had of a guy that was worked for the county, and he was the guard, and he had one winter, and he had his glove, and he cut his finger off the glove off his finger right here. I said, "What are you doing with that?" He said, "Well, I might have to pull the trigger." I said, "I don't want anything to get in my way." So I don't think he ever shot anybody, but he was sending them the message. But no, they had a gang had come in. They'd get them at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. 5 o'clock in the morning, they go out and work. Might be 8 or 10, 12 of them. Bring them back. They had bologna sandwiches and peanut butter and jelly or whatever it is they gave them for lunch. And they get back about 3:30, 4 o'clock, and they check them in. That was kind of how it worked. That was only 5 days a week. They didn't work on weekends.
No, with the cutoff, that was, Slim Whitman's son-in-law's brother, Ray Beagle.
Ray Beagle, yeah,
He
yeah.
killed 3 already. They
Yeah.
Running from Miami because they kept running. Remember Rabbit and James?
Yeah,
Jackson?
yeah.
So
Yeah,
they
they-
brung him a professional and they quit all that stuff.
Yeah, he was quite. Yeah, that impressed me when I saw his finger cut out of the glove. I said, "Golly, these guys mean business."
That's a bigger finger for you.
So what years you said that was that you were there?
We got there in '65 and we left the beginning of '69, late '68.
69. So 65 was during the desegregation
Yes.
era.
Yeah.
So was the jail segregated at the time, or? What do you recall about that?
Yes, it was, to some extent, it was. I don't remember exactly how they had that separated, but they did have it. It was segregated at some point. It was.
Lights were on the roadside.
Yeah.
Jim McLaughlin and all of them call and talk to the women
Yeah.
as they walk by,
Yeah,
get cigarettes. So
yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Did you interact, at all with any of the people there, or did?
Did I interact with them?
Yeah.
Sure, absolutely, yeah. I had, yeah, a lot of them. Yeah, I couldn't bring them cigarettes because I wasn't old enough to buy any. And I mean, I didn't have that kind of relationship, but I would, yeah, we'd talk and Rabbit, the guy named Rabbit, because they couldn't keep him in, he'd run everywhere he went. And had 2 or 3 guys that once they became trustees, then they would work around in the yard and around in the jail and clean up. And I get to know them. I mean, just get to know. They just got to be friends and never mistreated anybody. I mean, that wasn't what we were about. But yeah, I got to know them. Yeah.
Roommates at that point.
Excuse me.
I said just roommates at that
Yeah, you just yeah. Had one guy there. His name was Ed Perky, and he was doing time for bad checks. And yeah, he just write bad checks all the time. But he was a beautiful artist. He could draw anything, and he used to draw. I just sit there fascinated watching him draw pictures. He said, "Bring me a picture of something," and I'd take him a picture of my dog. And my God, I mean, it was just a beautiful talent that he writing on those checks too. So, and it finally caught up with him. Yeah. But yeah,
Jewelry boxes out of match stems.
they can do all kind of artwork. Yeah.
Is any of that art still available or around?
Still a couple of people.
Mom has some stuff over there that I can't find right now. She can't remember exactly where. I think she's got a set of the keys that come out of the old jail. My sister and I were talking about that the other day, but we'll find them eventually. If we do, we're going to turn them over to you guys. But we know we have that. I don't know what happened to them. They're somewhere in our belongings. Mom's packed away and she can't remember where she put them. So we'll deal with it.